And we're going to hear next from the IEDC, and we have two gentlemen, Victor Smith and Eric Doden, who have been drafted to be volunteers for the state of Indiana to some extent, and they both do tremendous things for the state in their efforts, and we greatly appreciate you two gentlemen's diligence and coordination and helping us to make a lot of exciting things happen in Indiana. So with that, thanks. I want to turn the microphone over to you and let you make your presentation to the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Senator. We're just going to go through a couple slides. We thought most of these emanate from a recent board meeting we just had of the IEDC just earlier this week. The first slide, this is just new information. One of the new rankings that just came out, the Tax Foundation's 2015 rankings just came out, that continue to hold Indiana #1 in the Midwest and #8 in the nation for the best and most welcoming tax environment. It's important just from a not only a tax reduction but a tax reformation, the tax reform mindset that the market really is pushing. And I just say that to first say thank you to the great leadership here to get us to that #1 and #8 position. It's really great that the product that you allow us to sell is in such good hands that you've given us. So I just want to say thank you. That's yet another moniker that we wear, with a badge of honor that we wear. Go ahead, next one.
And I also just want to say thank you. It's such an honor and a privilege to do these jobs. And when you come into them from the private sector, you don't know what to expect. But the product that we've been allowed to sell has just been phenomenal. And I think these results are going to, kind of show what's been going on. But we had a new record this year again for total projects, and for job commitments was higher than we anticipated. We anticipated around 22,000 job commitments based on what we felt the economy would do. As you can see, we're at 25,116. Our hourly wage continues to go north, and we'll show you a slide on that. And then our capital investment this year was $4.37 billion, which is 146% ahead of goal.
If I can make one comment on that, that's as of 12/1.
Okay.
So we'd already hit those targets as of the 1st of December, actually about a month before our original goal.
So these next slides just show you graphically, where we've been sort of year by year. And you can see that our deals continue to trend up, from in 2009, 160 to 200 to 219 to 256 to 261 to 281. Again, that's just a sign of a robust economy, a lot of growth by current customers, but also new customers that are coming in. And of course, every business in Indiana we consider a customer. And then in private sector job projections, this is our second best year since we've started this process in 2005. And again, this is as of 12/1/14, so these numbers will slightly migrate up over the next couple of weeks. But again, a very exciting year relative to what we projected would happen. Again, this shows you the trend of private sector investment projections. What you'll see is, a fair amount of gyration, a big year followed by maybe a little bit less, then followed by a big year. And we're seeing that trend continue, where this year is at $4.37 billion. And so we see that's a nice trend for us, because we know that capital investment jobs follow. And capital investment is a very important indicator of where things are going for the future of your economy in this state. But the nice thing, and I think we want to emphasize this, is the conditional incentives per job were actually lower than last year at 87.89. Last year we were averaging 9,200. So what this tells all of us is we're not having to buy our projects. We're able to sell value, and that's very exciting. And as many of you know, but it bears repeating, these are conditional incentives. That is, the only way they get the tax incentive is if they create the job and we certify that they created the job, and then they get generally an edge, at least a refundable tax credit. Just wanted to note that again. And then who's your average wage? Again, very exciting trends. We see the red line represents our state average. We see that trending up from 2005 to now it's at 2017. But as you can see, the IDC projected wage continues to be above the average wage. So we, at 2150, continue to see that trend pulling up, where our average wage in Indiana is improving and increasing, as we speak. Briefly on the compliance report, We won't go into this much, but it just gives you an idea that when we have a deal that maybe does not turn out the way that everyone anticipated, we do go back after that money. And we've had a great deal of success in recouping funds from companies who don't live up to, for whatever reason. Sometimes they move, but most of the time, maybe just business didn't go as well as they thought. We're able to recoup those funds when it's required and necessary.
I think the important thing is that it's on your list of things to do and that you continually monitor that and you take it as a serious part of the job objective. Yes. Chairman Brown.
Yeah, I guess with this slide on the foregone credits, do you repurpose them? Are they available for future projects?
Steve, why don't you?
Representative, generally the foregone credits are usually going to take the form of an edge credit. So it's not, it's one that we will decertify their ability to collect that credit in the future. So there would have been a commitment of that number. They'll never be able to collect on it. So it's not money in their pocket. Yeah.
Unless there's any other questions, moving on. The data that we just put up are showing very good trends, and we'd like to continue those trends. I'm convinced that we have a really good story to tell. We just need to tell our story with a bigger megaphone at more locations. So we're really putting an emphasis on going forward on telling Indiana's story. We've been doing that regionally. We've been doing that East Coast. We've been doing that West Coast. We've been doing that in targeted markets with targeted industries in Europe and in Asia. These are just a couple examples this past year, both the targeted day trip up in Canada that was very successful that ended up with a nice award for Lebanon, Indiana. We're also, we've had 3 different visits to China, or to China this year, 3 different visits to Japan this year. But again, we're really beginning to get targeted companies and targeted industries, and that takes money and effort and time. But I clearly believe that's going to be a substantial recovery in that investment.
We also just wanted to briefly report on the regional cities. As you remember, we really are appreciative of the vision that both you and the governor had for doing this study. We studied 11 communities over the United States that had led the nation in economic development over the last 20 years. And this Peer City Review is available at www.indianaregionalcities.com. Really would encourage you to go review that. We really took and condensed the 200 different leaders that we talked with over about a 2-month period into 9 principles that we were then able to travel around the state and share with different regions, and really focused on regional economies and regional growth as the pathway forward. I'm just grateful to report that we had a very robust attendance. Over 500 community leaders came to these 6 events. I want to just tell you about one event in South Bend and Elkhart. There was over 200 leaders from 4 different counties and over 25 leaders from each county, just to give you an idea of the kind of collaboration that we're beginning to see off this initiative. And as the study shows, when we talked with these leaders in these communities, a win for one is a win for all was the mantra that we really heard the most. And we're beginning to see regional collaboration really in a way that we could have only hoped for, and is very, very exciting. Very appreciative, again, of the vision that each of you had in making that a reality.
The next couple slides, one is an opportunity slide, one is a challenge slide. Again, the opportunity, as I mentioned before, and I don't have to repeat, is just the opportunity. The challenge for us is making sure we get our story told. That takes money, time, and effort. That's something that we think is a huge opportunity for the state. Challenges ahead. We can maybe ferret some of this out if you have questions as well. But we want to make sure that we're looking not only for 2015 but beyond, to make sure that the tools that legislatively you've provided to the Indiana Economic Development Corporation are keeping up to speed with the marketplace and the type of investments that we're seeing, because the types of investments that we're seeing are morphing. They're changing. They're more capital intensive and historically a little bit lower in headcount of jobs, but that's just because of the automation factor. It's just a fact. It's a nationwide thing. We're not ahead of the curve, behind the curve. It's just exactly what's going on. There are larger capital dollars that have historically a little bit smaller headcount associated with them, and we need to make sure that our tools are keeping up with that trend to make us as attractive as we once were when we were really focused just on jobs.
Yeah, and I think two things there, that while they're sometimes lower headcount, they're generally higher wage opportunities. That's important. And the other thing that's to note is we have this type of situation, and without using a customer specifically, I'll just say broadly, we'll have someone approach us with 1,000 employees in, Tipton County and say, look, we're looking at 3 different plants to put this $500 million extension on. There's not going to be a big new headcount, but if we put it here, the 1,000 jobs will be maintained for the next 10 or 15, 20 years. Right. If we put it in a different state, then that more than likely means that those 1,000 jobs are going to be retained there. And so we just want to bring an awareness of these capital-intensive projects and that they are important, not just because of net new jobs, but because of job retention.
Right.
Talk about sunset dates.
Oh, you go ahead.
The other thing that we just want to make note of is some sunset dates that are some of our tools. We just wanted to be aware of. The HBI VCI tax credit has a sunset to it. And then also we wanted to make note of the workforce training. We're seeing an increasing desire from some of our customers to have more workforce training. And we just see that as an important trend to make note of. The good news for us is that when that is used, it's a match. So they have to put some money at risk to train their people, but also those employees are here, they're Hoosiers, and so that's an important thing for workforce development.
Let me make a comment about something that I get a little nervous about, is that, and the Hoosier Business Investment Tax Credit, the last time we did a major rewrite, I chaired that committee, and I think obviously we want to review the effectiveness of how it's structured and what we can do, and we need to do it from the perspective of not only how do you make it so that people will, every fish will absolutely jump at the bait, but we need to make it so that it's something that we can afford and we can live with, and I know you guys understand that. This year, we've made EDGE credits out there that they're eligible for about $224 million. And most of those don't come to fruition, and they don't go against the state's ledger. But I'm always worried that at some point in time, all of a sudden, all these credits that we're putting out there are all going to get collected, and then we're going to have a state revenue problem. And so I guess the question is, are we able to track how many people actually use those credits and when they get redeemed so that we can see whether there's a pattern or not? And then secondly, is there a running ratio that we know is an appropriate measure of how much it's really going to cost us? And just from a budget management side of the ledger, the thing makes me nervous. I want you to succeed, but sometimes I wake up at night thinking, man, if I had to honor all those credits at once, I'd be in real trouble. So where are we on that exercise?
Life on those awards.
Yeah, so right, there's a limited period of time under which they can collect the amounts, obviously.
There's a shelf life on those.
But within the last couple of years or so, we have also been coordinating with the Department of Revenue. The Revenue provides back the big picture of how much and the percentage, how much is coming in, so we can track that against what it would have been.
Would you all be willing to share that with people like Senator Hirschman and Chairman Brown and myself and some other people, just so we can sort of get a feel for that? I think that's part of the analysis when we renew and redo our tax credits anyhow. So I think we need to work on that just to make sure that we're able to cover what we promise people.
Historically, to me, it's been somewhat surprising that you don't get 100%. Even on a refundable.
Well, you don't even get anywhere near it, actually.
So it's cash on the table. Someone's not collecting, but we can track specifically how that percentage, how much is.
Well, I'm just worried you're going to look at the fact that they don't redeem them all, and you're just going to go crazy awarding even more. See. I know from you, Eric, that's true.
Our last bullet point is something we've mentioned before. We're just looking for One thing that we really want to push is our, just telling our story in a broader way, bigger megaphone. That's really what we're looking for in this next biennium.
And that concludes our formal. We're available for questions or comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions for the presenters? Senator Talion.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, if you can help me out. On that page that talks about the Hoosier average wage and the project wages,
Yes.
all right. I guess I don't want to argue with you about which number you're going to use. I know that the Hoosier median wage is more like $15. But if you want to go with average, okay. But isn't the national average like several dollars higher than this, either of these numbers?
Does someone know what the national average is?
Like 24, 25 bucks?
I don't know that I know
I
exactly
really
what that
don't.
is. I think it is higher, but I'm not sure by how much.
All right, so we're getting jobs out there, but they're still less than the national average wages is. I guess they're better than Indiana, but why are we still like lagging behind the country?
Well, the data here, I don't have the national average, so I mean, that's not something that, we've been tracking these two metrics. What I have heard people say is you also take into consideration the cost of living where you are, and I think there's a factor there as well. This is obviously just showing what the IEDC related deals, that is a $21.50 wage. That's what we've been tracking. Senator, I just don't know. We haven't been tracking that as another metric. Not that that's wrong or right, but maybe it's something that we should add into the mix as another thing.
Hasn't your objective generally been to lift the state average? And so that's where your focus is.
Yeah, so when we actually do deals with state tax incentives, if it's a $12 to $15 an hour, for example, you'll generally see a much, often if we do anything at all, it will be SEF. It'll be training dollars.
Because that was my next question.
Good. So we really try to focus on making sure that, we are going after the higher wage jobs when it comes to what we incentivize. Obviously what we can't control. A lot of our deals are with current customers that are already here. We can't control their wages, but we really try to make sure that when we give an incentive, it's to companies that are, bringing in higher wage jobs.
Right.
All right, so now let me ask you about that training money. All right, I'm going on this, and I'm looking at your numbers, and it said actual in 14 was like 4.5 million, and then, is this a carryover for what you expect to do in 15? Why is the 15 estimate higher than the 15 appropriation? Is that you're just carrying money over?
Can you just clarify what fund you're on right now?
Yeah, just,
1001, Skills Enhancement Fund.
Okay, there you go.
Mark. Do you have this one?
Yeah, there we go.
You're talking about this current estimate versus the appropriate.
Yeah.
I believe those are, as a result of some transfers. There was I think in this case, like we had the ARC, Indiana, there was $5,000.
5 million.
5 million.
5 million.
Or 5 million, sorry. And it was just the way the buckets worked. We do not have 21.
Can you help us, Brian?
Yeah, Senator, I think what's happening is that IEDC got a biennial appropriation in the last budget of 25 million. And the way that we kind of organize that for the summary is we just split it in half when we show appropriations for each year. That doesn't mean they have to spend 12.5 million per year. That's just how we are accounting for it.
Okay,
So does
all
that
right.
answer your question?
Partially. So now my question is, are you giving out this money? Are you, if we appropriated $25 million, I mean, how much are you actually getting out there?
So, it appears that we are offering pre-commits in $20 million a year range. 6 out of 10 are accepted. We are spending this money. We have some older money that's been invested in this program, also burning as we
All right, and
And clarify that just a little bit, I think, so just to clarify, just to make sure I understand, but we pre-commit more than what we have in the budget, with the full expectation and knowledge that we will not get that many acceptances. So what we don't always know of our pre-commits, if we pre-commit $20 million, and we have a $12.5 million budget, we know that on average, 60% of our pre-commits go into a project. So we actually have more risk out there from a pre-commit perspective than we actually have money in the budget. So what that tells you is we are committing the budget on CEF. Is
okay.
that fair to say?
And
Based on historical
Based on
And-
historical.
performance.
part of the reason I'm asking this question is because we just spent half the morning talking about training program money that is in pots all over 5 different agencies, and we're trying to get a handle on it. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly what kind of programs do you offer through you?
Well, that's the thing. These are not IEDC training programs. We're partnering with the employer itself. So these are training dollars that the employer itself, on the job for a specific function, are going to train somebody for. And if it's $5,000 to train that person over a 2-year period, the state, what we're saying is, you go ahead and do that, spend the $5,000, and once they certify that that training's been completed, we'll be your partner and pay for half of that up to a certain point. So it's not a class that we're offering that people can sign up to. This is actually on the job for a specific person, for a specific function, after that training's been completed, for them to apply to get the partnership of the state for reimbursement. That's what.
Okay, all
So
right.
this is as close, this is it. This is as close to you as you can get to training somebody for a job.
Got
As
it.
it is
All
the
right.
employer actually themselves training.
Thank
Does that
you.
help?
Yeah,
And I would just say, from being in industry, it is important to have an incentive that incentivizes certain employers to train. Because a lot of people, a lot of the business friends that I have see training as a necessary evil. Emphasis on evil, because it takes away from productivity. But by having this incentive in place, it actually motivates them to actually invest in their employees, which in the long run benefits the state of Indiana and the employees of Indiana.
Any other questions? Well, gentlemen, your job is to sell, so go out there and do it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming in today.
Shut this down.
Okay. We're ahead. We can go back out to lunch. Yeah. Connie, am I supposed to refer to you as Senator Lawson or the Grand Poobah of the Secretary of State or? It's, yeah. Madam Secretary, okay. Well, our next presentation is from the Secretary of State's office, and we're pleased and fortunate to have our Secretary of State, Connie Lawson, with us to present that. So let's go ahead and see what you have. And I haven't had a chance to look at this. Do you have in this request this one-stop program? Okay, all right.
We have 4 divisions, business services. We're all corporate formation. Business registration filing. I would just tell you that I think early 2000, Indiana Secretary of State's office compliments everywhere we go about our same-day service. And with you when I'm at the national expedited fee to expedite services business, and the answer is no. Our dealer services division is responsible for licensing and regulating the vehicle industry and water truck sales.
Connie, would you turn on that mic there? Yeah.
We talked to them about important messages about financial literacy and being vigilant about researching their investment opportunities and making good financial choices. Just wanted to touch briefly on the crowdfunding initiative that you all passed legislation this last session regarding crowdfunding, and we did get our rules promulgated. And so what those rules allow is that they create a new way for Hoosier entrepreneurs and investors to invest in Indiana. Not only, the legislature's intent was to strengthen the state's economy and also allow a business to open their door to a new type of investor, and that's what our rules have been doing. It's because currently an entrepreneur can reach all types of Hoosier investors, where before they were limited to mostly wealthy investors. So Hoosiers have a chance to invest in Indiana through this crowdfunding opportunity. Entrepreneurs can raise up to $2 million, and Indiana investors can invest up to $5,000 for this in each opportunity. And we've had 5 Indiana businesses so far take advantage of this new opportunity since July the 1st. Our request that is before you is to continue funding the efforts of the office in a similar way of our prior request of 2 years ago. We have made a commitment to continue to deliver excellent constituent services and using our existing resources. But I do need to take a moment to highlight our Business One-Stop project. This project has been a focal point of my office for the last 2.5 years. Briefly, the division of Business One-Stop is to innovate our online services that we provide for businesses. So phase 1 is the Secretary of State's office, it's the Department of Workforce Development, and the Department of Revenue. And we will create an online dashboard so that businesses can streamline their processes with state government and manage those processes just like we all do our online banking. There's been a lot of planning that's gone into this vision, and I'm pleased that our project team, with the direction from the General Assembly, have already begun the development. It's important to note that we have not had, to this date, a budget appropriation for this project. We've been able to come as far as we have by using non-general fund resources, specifically the enhanced access fees from the Secretary of State's office. But the heavy lifting of the implementation is upon us, and we are asking the General Assembly and the State Budget Agency to provide the resources necessary to take this project to go live. Just want to briefly mention the election division. I'm honored to serve as Indiana's Chief Election Officer, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you and the Budget Agency for your foresight in supporting Indiana's major election administration challenges in the light of the expiration of our federal funding that we talked about last year, that funding was going to go away. Well, it has gone away. Last 2 years ago, excuse me, your commitment to effective election administration, continued support of the most stable statewide voter registration system in the country, the leading voting system technical oversight program or certification program, and a full voter outreach and education program is greatly appreciated. And we also followed the General Assembly's lead in conducting statewide voter list maintenance. This was a substantial task and one that the statute requires to be conducted every 2 years to avoid a large buildup of inaccurate voter registration records. So it's not my intention to testify on the election division's budget today because the co-directors, the bipartisan co-directors, it's their job to submit the budget. But I did just want to thank you for your support and your commitment to strong election administration. Mr. Chairman, if I could point out some of that information in the handouts that you and your members have been given.
Please do.
You have this letterhead information, the bullet point information that's on the letterhead. The first bullet point is regarding our appropriation request, and it says that our request is less than half of our anticipated reversion over the biennium. Well, that's true, but it's reversion/revenue. The Secretary of State's office will generate about $14 million a year in revenue to the state, so that's why that statement was made. And if you look at the agency operating summary before you, you will see that under administration, thank you, I don't know why I'm doing that, under the administration line, our baseline budget starts at $4,558,000. And we are requesting $5,453,000 in 16 and $5,003,000 in 17. So that's almost a $900,000 increase. But I did want you to know that that's as the result of what we expect to have our expenses increase because of Business One Stop, as far as staffing needed for the call center, the help desk, the technical support that will be needed for Business One Stop. You will not see that in the other agencies' budget. We were asked to put it in our budget. So that's where we are with that.
Connie, on the Business One Stop proposal, it sounds like something that we need to be interested in. Nobody likes to spend a lot more money on something. Is this susceptible to any user fee collection of the types of things that are going to be done in this process? Or is this for the benefit of government mostly? Or is there a chance to cover some of these ongoing expenses in that way?
We have done that. And, all of our transactions have an enhanced access fee
Okay.
with them. And so if you look at the next sheet, the Business One Stop sheet, you will see that that first chart is the cost that we all thought Business One Stop was going to cost us 2 years
Okay.
ago.
All right.
We thought we were going to be about $34,400,000.
Uh-huh.
Well, our office has worked really hard, and if you will look at the next Business One Stop projected cost as of September of 2014, we have reduced that to $15,750,000. Now,
So if I wait 2 more years, will it be half of that?
how much further? Senator? I do want you to note the orange line here,
Okay.
because of the Secretary of State's enhanced access fees, we have already spent $800,000 out
Okay.
of those fees, and we paid for that requirement gathering, the RFP process, all of that was paid for from our enhanced access fees.
Okay.
The rest of that line, you will see that we expect to spend a total of $2,250,000, again, out of our enhanced access fees.
Okay.
So, but the general fund appropriation that's needed for Business One Stop is about $9,100,000 for the biennium.
Yeah. Okay. Questions, anybody? We'll continue to work with you to try to see what we can do on that. Yeah. I know the Commissioner of the Department of Revenue does feel like looks like a good product to him, and so that's good to hear that, and we'll just have to see what we can do, okay?
Mr. Chairman, it's important to note that, this is, all agencies need to update their programming once in a while, and so this is an opportunity to make our services more convenient for our businesses, but at the same time, the Department of Revenue, Department of Workforce Development, and Business Services and the Secretary of State are all upgrading our programs as well. And so you're getting Business One Stop, but you're getting new IT in all of those agencies.
I'd like for you to work with the budget agency a little bit too, to see if they have they're faced with these kind of exercises all the time, to see if they have any suggestions for you or somebody to work with you.
To do that.
Okay? Senator Talion?
Thank you. Connie, how does this Business One Stop interface with DWD? I mean, at what point do you?
Now we have a steering committee in all three
No,
agencies.
I don't mean I mean, when it's up and running,
I will-
how will DWD make use of this?
Well, it'll be a one full-service portal, so the vision is that a business will be able to get online, entering their information once, using one username and password, be able to register their business with the Secretary of State's office, and then also from that same full-service portal, reach the DWD site where they can sign up for unemployment and those kinds of things, the things that they need to do there. So it will be a, a full-service portal for the state agencies that a business needs to, the first horizon is Secretary of State, Department of Revenue, Department of Workforce Development. The second horizon hasn't been decided yet, but I can see possibly Indiana Professional Licensing Agency or IEDC and those kinds of agencies. So we want a business to be able to have all the information they need at their hand with, entering the information once in this full-service portal.
Definitely like one password.
Yeah.
Yes, Representative Klinker.
Mr. Chairman. Secretary Lawson, I want to congratulate you on your ads. They were clever. I wish we could have had a better percentage than 28% in this last election, but
We had 30.
I thought
Representative
your
Klinker,
ads,
but-
30%?
30, yeah.
And that's maybe better than
Talking
some
about
other
our voter
states.
outreach ads, every vote counts, that ad.
Yes.
Thank you.
I thought
thank
it
you.
was great, and the one that said that, one of our leaders won by one vote, I thought that was very clever and would appreciate your continuing that because I really thought that would bring a lot of voters out. But I guess, it's not a presidential year, but I wanted to thank you for doing that because I thought it was well worth the money and the time that you spent. It was cleverly done.
Thank you,
So
thank you.
Any other questions for the secretary? Thank you, Connie, for coming. Good to see you. Have a nice holiday. Thanks to all your employees for their good work. Let's see, is DWD, does anybody know if they're on the way? Well, Senator Mishler's going to do the presentation for them. Deanna, did you and David look at the schedule next week to see if we could work this out? Okay. Members, while we're waiting, next week's schedule, we meet on December the 17th, and I got to looking at that time frame there and wondering, first off, we're going to have a business meeting, and we had allocated 45 minutes for that, and I think there's going to be too much stuff there to get it done in 45 minutes. So I talked to David about starting earlier, and then as we looked at it, we've got it reworked so that the Supreme Court will start at 9 and have 30 minutes. The Department of Health will start at 9:30. Department of Corrections will have 10 to 11, and then the business meeting will start at 11. And when we get done with the business meeting, we're going to go over to the Christmas party at my expense at the Weber Grill. So the sooner you get done, the sooner you get to eat on me. So that's our goal. And then if we do all that, we don't have to come back that afternoon. Now, how's that sound? Representative Cherry's for that. So hopefully we'll get it done, but we do have to start at 9 next, what is this, Thursday? It'll be next Wednesday. Yeah. Pardon? Well, I don't know, but we will have special rules or not. Okay, so are we ready to go? Yeah. How you doing, stranger? Good. Okay, next we're going to have the Department of Workforce Development. So you folks need to introduce yourselves so we all know who you are, and we're pleased to have you this afternoon.
Thank you very much. First, my name is Bill Knox, CFO and Chief of Staff at Department of Workforce Development. Started November 17th, so somewhat new on the job, but we understand your time is precious. I will try to answer as many questions as I can in my limited time that I've been here. Also brought a number of my staff along with me, so just kind of wanted to ask you initially if you do have questions that I am not able to answer. Do you prefer that we table it until we can get back to you? Or would you rather have me refer to one of my staff and have them answer?
You've got some good help here that I recognize, Bill, so let's take advantage of their skills, okay?
And this is Michelle Marshall. She is the Deputy Director of Operations at DWP. I think, as you said, you probably all know her. Expert in the unemployment insurance department is Josh Richardson. He's our Deputy Director of Unemployment Insurance Operations. And then behind me is a gentleman that's had 29 years of experience with the Department of Workforce Development. He's our deputy.
So you're just in training, and these guys are going to carry you, right?
Yes, I definitely may have forgotten more information than I.
Push the. There we go. That's good. That's fine, Bill.
To repeat that,
No,
Senator?
no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We're on the fast track this afternoon.
Okay. And I just wanted to thank you as well for having us today. And I think when we go to work, Commissioner Braun comes from the private sector, and so do I. And when we come to work every day, I just want to let you know that we have a couple of things in mind. One of those things is that we know who our customers are from the Department of Workforce Development, and that would be the people here in Indiana that do not have a job, and the employers, and we're trying to help them get together so that we have a strong workforce and people are employed and more fulfilled in their lives. We know that is our customer. However, we know really who our boss is, who we feel, and that is your constituents, a lot of you, the taxpayers here in the state of Indiana. They fund the whole operation, and so, you know, just as an overall perspective, I wanted you to know that we treat this job very seriously, and everything that we are trying to do here going forward, trying to be more efficient and effective in the way that we look over the money that comes in and the way that we spend the money as well. Commissioner Braun is very, very interested in results and outcomes, and that is what we will be focused on in the next biennium. So just real quickly, in regards to a contextual overview of the agency, we're really kind of the way I see a couple of agencies in one, where they're connected, but they also are distinct. We, of course, work with employers and employees in regards to workforce skills training and education services. And we also, our department also handles the unemployment benefit payments and the collections from the employers. So two things do work together, but a bit distinct. We're certainly mostly federally funded. A lot of our money coming in regards to the Workforce Investment Act of 1998, which is now superseded, as probably most of you know, by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014. That act will go into effect July 1st of 2015, so coming up here in the next 6 months. Our current annual state funding is $23 million, 62% of that, which is for adult basic education, which are fundamental skills, high school diplomas for people, and 25% of our funding is for dropout prevention, which is, I know probably most of you are familiar with the JAG program, which targets juniors and seniors in high school that look like they might be on a track of dropping out of school. We try to target them and help them to stay in school. So if you flip, and then our UI benefits are funded through, of course, unemployment insurance premiums paid by businesses here in the state of Indiana. And so if you flip to the next page, please, on the budget summary, and this is really a summary of the incoming dollars that we have, going from left to right there at the top. The fiscal year 2014 is an actual column. 15, of course, we're still in the middle of 15, and we're at a projected standpoint there, and then the proposed for fiscal year 2016 and 2017. I think one thing of particular interest to a lot of you, probably all of you here, is in regards to the trust fund. As you know, we were in a deficit balance for the past several years, and we've got a upcoming slide in here where we project that hopefully we will pay off that balance in the year 2016. So you can see there where the interest payment in the year 2017 does go away, and we hope to be able to stick with that plan. And then you can see down in where the revenues are, we're about a $200 million operation really with our federal and our state money. And as you can see, they're going from the fiscal year of 2015 to 16 and 17, we go from 23 to 28 million. And again, we'll talk about that here a little bit later as far as where that $5 million increase comes from. Let's see, if we go to the next slide, we break out a little bit what our training, really a lot of our federal dollars are for training and education. Mostly coming again from WIA, which will be WIOA, the Wagner-Pfizer Act, and the Trade Adjustment Act, 86 million there. Unemployment administration dollars, which are about 48 million, all coming from the Fed. Adult and basic education, they're at 24 million, and then some other programs that we have broken out, which I know we have somewhat limited time, and I'm open to any questions that you might have there. So again, about a $200 million organization and about 1,213 full and part-time staff in the fiscal year of 2015. So when we go to the next slide, just kind of a little description of what our training programs are all about. The Workforce Investment Act, as many of you know, really created, this is more for a one-stop center. Local boards were created to really collaborate with employers in local communities. They know a little bit better what their workforce needs to be. So we've got 12 different regions here in the state of Indiana. Those dollars we get from the feds, and then they go out to the regions, and we really don't have a lot of control over those dollars. We do oversee them, but the local boards really are the big determinants as to how those dollars are spent. Most of them for training is what that is. We do on-the-job training with businesses. We do some internship programs the employers do, and really try to see what the employers are really needing from the workforce standpoint. We have Wagner-Pfizer dollars as well, 14.5 million. Wagner-Pfizer was established back in 1933 as a part of the New Deal, and really it's more of a matching program where we're taking what do employers need, what are the employees out there to fill it, and we try to match those together. So it's a little more limited in scope. And then we have trade adjustment assistance, which is very narrow in scope, more for people who might get laid off due to foreign production relocation or any type of foreign competition. They could be eligible for that program. So we get out of really the training and the employer-employee situation in regards to finding a job, And we kind of go into the unemployment insurance aspect, which is for those people that do not have jobs. And obviously, that's been a big situation here in Indiana. When the Great Recession hit, I know we were forced to borrow some funds from the federal government, which, as we mentioned, we're still paying down. But, you know, the funds there typically that we get, $48 million for administration, that certainly doesn't include the benefit payments at all. But what we use that for are the claims adjudication to try to figure out what claimants, the different people that come in and want their benefits. We're trying to determine who is eligible for those. Some of those are challenged, obviously, and they take it to appeal, so we have an appeals process. And then just basically relating to those people, answering questions and so forth, customer service, and then there's also a fraud investigation. And with that, I forgot, no, he is not here. Is Jeff Gill? Did not, is Jeff here? Oh, there you are, Jeff. I'm sorry. Jeff Gill is our chief counsel and does a lot of work in regards to the fraud and the appeals situation in regards to unemployment insurance. So just for your information right now, I know probably most of you know it, but the state of Indiana, the maximum unemployment benefit is $390 a week. We're about in the middle of the range there. The high is in Massachusetts at $674, and the low is in Mississippi at $235. So we're right in the middle of the pack there. Next slide, as you can see, unemployment claims certainly, fortunately, have gone down over the last several years. They reached a maximum here in Indiana in May of 2009, and so they've been going down really ever since then. And I was looking at a report just the other day, and I believe I saw where the weekly continuing claims were around 30,000 right now. So obviously, we've had a significant decrease in the claims, which is a good thing. And then next slide, in regards to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. As I had mentioned there, if you look there in 2010, the fund balance was nearly $2 billion. And as I understand it, basically how this works is we get our unemployment insurance premiums from the employers, and then we pay out whatever benefits are necessary during that year, but we really never see the money. The money, we're kind of a conduit. It goes to the UTF, Universal Trust Fund, and they then revert the dollars back to pay the benefits for the claimants. So it's basically a fairly easy calculation there, and we got in a bind definitely during the recession years, ran it up to $2 billion in 2011, and it has been decreasing ever since then. Obviously, one of the reasons why we do want to get this balance paid off is for our employers out there, because every year that we do not have it paid off, they are paying additional money on the FUTA tax, on the federal unemployment insurance tax. And you could see there we started off out there in the FUTA penalty column at 0.3%, which what that means is it's a reduction in the credit that we typically get from the federal government. And every year you can see that going up by another 0.3%, which is where we are basically right now at 1.5% as a reduction in the credit, which is meaning somewhere around, it'd be about probably $105 per employer per year or per employee, I should say, per year, which our employers are having to pay. So it's going to be great if we can get rid of that trust fund balance. Our employers, I think, would be happy for sure. Other than that, let's see, I was just going to say.
Senator Italian has a question, Bill.
Okay.
Can I ask you a couple questions about the UI Trust Fund? The claims that you're making now, you've got the number of new claims coming on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know approximately what the duration?
That's a good question.
So, we look at the number of claims times the number of weeks,
Mm-hmm.
the average number of weeks. Has that gone down?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you know where we are?
don't, we'd have to provide you that data. We do have, there's a calculation that we use for average duration.
Right, and so the projections that you're doing on the trust fund, in term, now, on this page, yeah, the line that says benefits, these are projections that you're doing?
The, up until, it would be 2013, those would be actual numbers.
Right.
When we get into
Of course.
2000 and actually 2014 would be the first year that we're doing an estimate there because as you can see out there, it's actually a calendar year, not our fiscal year. So yeah, that would be an estimated number, and then from there on.
At some point, I mean, that number of average weeks has to go into this estimate projection, right? So if you could just get me that information as to what you're using to project the benefits. And then I do have one more question, if I could. Even though the deficit is being reduced, yeah, I think that's right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
How come the FUTA penalty keeps going higher?
And
Tell your president about that.
Well, no, I'm just trying to find out
Yeah.
why that.
it's really, it doesn't really matter what the balance of the deficit is. It's just the fact that we have one. It could be a small balance and it would still go up. It's just every year that it's outstanding, it's going to be added.
Jumps up higher
Yeah.
even though you're reducing the balance.
That's correct. That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
And then, so we're getting now out of the unemployment insurance realm and getting back in more to the training and the job matching realm, if you might call it. And as you can see there, we do perform a bit poorly in some of the key metrics in regards to the overall state skill levels. 39% of U.S. businesses cited difficulties finding qualified talent in a 2013 Manpower survey. We're ranked 39th in per capita income, down from 30th in 1980. And non-manufacturing related sectors are not experiencing as much growth as we would like. There's 500,000 workers out there with no high school diploma right now, so we're 31st in the nation there. 68% of the workers out there with no college degree, bottom 10 in the nation. 34% of our high school grads don't attend college. 30% of our public school students need remediation, which would mean literacy and numeracy tests, math and reading. And about 30% of our public college students complete a 4-year degree on time. So I think really what we're looking at here, definitely the unemployment insurance portion of what we do is very, very important for those people who are on tough times. But what our charter really is developing the best workforce possible here in the state of Indiana. And I think what Commissioner Braun's vision is to, what we're trying to do is try to get a demand-driven workforce system put into place. It's never really been done in any other state that we know of. And what we mean by that, if we flip to the next page, what we're trying to do there is try to establish, and this would be in an IT type of situation, a statewide framework to collect current and future hiring needs here in the state of Indiana. A lot of times, what we have out there are whatever your current job boards are, and you try to match up the employee to that employer as far as that situation goes, and that's good. But I think really to create the workforce that Commissioner Braun really has a vision for, we need to go out there and find out what employers are going to be looking for, let's say maybe 3, 5, maybe even 10 years down the road. And it's not easy to do. It requires a lot of participation from our employers here in the state. What we'd like to do, if we can find that information, we really do believe we can do that. We find the information, be able to take what those jobs are and marry those up with with classifications that are coded, associated skills that are aligned with those jobs that are going to be needed. And then what we're going to try to do then, it makes sense to me, is once we have those jobs and the skills that are necessary, try to go back to our educational institutions and align the educational curriculum with those job skills that are going to be necessary. I hope I'm making sense here. I think, and as an example, we have a new CIO with our organization. He used to work for Eli Lilly. And he said when he came on board, he was there for about 26 years, there were a lot of organic chemists that were needed because that was the way that they actually manufactured their drugs. It was more chemical. They needed people that understood that. However, he said now, 25 years later, the way they make drugs is more on a biological basis. So they're creating organisms that actually they feed, and these drugs are created in that respect. So if you went to school, let's say 10 years ago and said, I want to work for Eli Lilly, so I'm going to become an organic chemist, and all of a sudden you get out of school and you find out you can't work at Eli Lilly because there just aren't that many jobs available in that regard. So we think it would be much smarter to make sure that we anticipate what those demands are going to be and then align our curriculums in that regard. And we think not only will that help Indiana in regards to matching up employers to employees, but also I think from an economic development standpoint, when people are looking to relocate into other states, and we have all the analysis on what our workforce looks like, that they're really trained for the jobs that are coming up, we think that they will be more in line with locating here in Indiana than any other state. So that is kind of the demand process there that we're wanting to work on with the new initiative that will be asking for additional funding from the state of Indiana. And then also, just the last slide there, once we get that demand system figured out, we're also going to, we're wanting to work on, and some states already have this, where they have a case management system where once the person gets into the job, once they enter the job sector, we can track them all the way through on a lot of different performance measures. And right now, really the tracking ability is fairly limited, but if we can have a good tracking system as well, a good case management system, we will know exactly what is working, what isn't working. We can be very flexible in creating our curriculums in the state of Indiana. And also, I just think driving future economic development for the state, because we will be more prepared than anyone else to handle the needs of the employers. With that, I guess we are at the end of our presentation. Certainly open to any questions that you all may have.
You have about 1,200 employees with your agency. Do you have any problems with retention of employees at the salary levels that you're able to offer?
That is a very good question, and the resounding answer to that almost across all departments would be yes. In fact, we just had a presentation this morning in regards to unemployment insurance, and that was a question that came up, and they had some very detailed slides as far as how Indiana ranks as far as pay scale goes in regards to a lot of the other states, and we were extremely low. And as you know, and what I found out here in the little time that I've been here, the government, the state government employment system, it is tough to let people go. It seems like the starting pays are lower. There's more of a fixed cost situation in regards to employment costs. It's hard to have incentive-based employment situations. So, Senator Kenley, in regards to your question there, yes, there is a retention problem because of that.
Senator Talion?
Thank you. You weren't here for this morning, but what we heard this morning, and for the past couple of days actually, has been a lot of discussion about workforce, career, and tech, and education, and money that is in little bits and pots in at least 5 agencies that we can think of, and maybe more. And I think all of us have had a little trouble, maybe I speak broadly, I've had a little trouble trying to figure out where all these pots of money and are these programs overlapping, and who's in charge? Now, we had this agency, CC, who was sort of kind of in charge for a while, or was supposed to be in charge, and now they're going to be dissolved. And, you know, in your opinion, is DWD the right place to coordinate all of those monies? And how do you see, you know, your pots of money fitting in with all of the others?
Right. And probably my perspective, given the amount of time that I've been in this role, may not be able to give you as complete of an answer as you might like, but I will only tell you that I agree with your assessment. And what it seems like we are finding is, don't we do this somewhere else already? I think that's been a question that a lot of times has come up as in the last month that I've been here. And I will tell you this, knowing Commissioner Braun the way that I do, that is a concern of his as well. And I think it seems to me like there are policies that are issued, whether it be federal or state, and sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason as far as who is in charge of it. The outcome is, let's get it done by somebody, and it goes out to another committee or another council or whatever it might be. I will just tell you that I believe that the DWD is the right place for workforce development, and if there are some other entities out there, some other councils that deal in that, I think in the long run, we would like to be the authority in that regard, and we are welcoming that charge to be the authority in developing our workforce. And so I don't know, you know, politically and all the steps that are going to be needed in order to do that. I know with what happened here with CC, you know, it being dissolved here recently, I think that already you're seeing a step of some consolidation there. And I would think that we will continue to see that here in the future. I just don't know how quickly that's going to be, but I certainly understand your concern there.
All right, just one more follow-up. So DWD right now has essentially two missions. One of them is to administer unemployment,
Correct.
and the other one is all of the workforce programs, including adult ed.
Yes, yeah, from in regards to the Workforce Investment Act and soon to be the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, yes, we would be in charge of that. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you. Last year, we appropriated $6 million for Jobs Across America graduates. How many students did we impact with that $6 million?
And yes, that question, I'm not sure on.
We can get back to you on the exact number of students. I know that the program was essentially doubled in size as far as the number of schools that are reached across the state, but I don't know off the top of my head as far as students, but we're happy to get back to you on that for sure.
Okay, because one of the things going forward, I think there's 2 or 3 or 4 programs out there that go into the high schools to try and make success of graduates and trying to figure out where the best bang for our buck is.
Okay.
Are you, I'm sorry, Representative Brown, are you talking about the JAG program there? I'm sorry, okay, and it's just because of all the acronyms I've had to get used to over the last month, I mistook that, but we call it Jobs for American Graduates. And yes, you did, definitely, I had seen it was $6 million allocated over the last 2 years. You know, we think it's tremendous bang for the buck, and I know I did see one of the charts that I had analyzed was individuals without a high school diploma. I believe this was in the year 2011, so it was a bit back, but the unemployment rate for those folks were 18%. And for those people that did have a high school diploma, it dropped all the way down to 10%. So a huge increase. The people that we do affect in the Jobs for American Graduates program, if these people were going to drop out of school, they'd be a portion of that unfortunate class. And we've got a 90% graduation rate with those people that we are identifying. So I think 90% is just an unbelievable figure as far as keeping those juniors and seniors in school that might have dropped out. And I think, of course, we know Governor Pence is a huge proponent of the JAG program, National Vice Chairman. And we also know that I believe the state of Indiana received the most post-secondary scholarship dollars for those participants in that program of any other state in the country. So we think the program is great.
Again, I know it's important, but I have a program I work with, Youth First, that we only gave $500,000 to, and they have a 95% graduation rate.
Yeah. And I guess the numbers are, something to look at there as far as, I totally understand what you're saying.
Other questions? Representative Klinker.
Mr. Chairman. On your Unemployment Insurance Administration page, your budget, $48 million.
Yes.
As you go down, your claims adjudication has a certain number of staff. Your appeals, your claimant employer, 56. Customer service to employers and claimants, 48. And then your fraud investigation, 54.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to me why, and I know your gentleman is here, your lawyer, why you need so many in the fraud investigation over your customer service to employers and claimants and the appeals? Is there that much fraud really occurring in this area in this state?
Mm-hmm. And I think I will, if you don't mind, defer to Jeff Gill on that.
I just looked at that number, and it's larger than our customer service. That's why I'm asking. It must
Totally
be.
understand. Mm-hmm.
One thing to note is a lot of the staff that you see on the claim, especially out in the field, the 190 there, also are involved in customer service activities. So customer service does flow through some of the other functions as well. We do, every state has problems with fraud, especially in today's climate and culture with identity theft and that sort of thing. As we get smarter and change our systems to prevent and detect fraud, so do the bad guys. They get smarter. So it's a constant battle. And in my opinion, we can never dedicate enough resources to combat fraud.
Are you finding a lot of fraud?
Yeah. Well, as a percentage, as an overall percentage of the money that we spend in benefits, it's probably less than 4%. So, but any fraud is bad fraud, in our opinion. So.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? We appreciate the fact that we're getting our fund back in shape. I know that's a good sign for all of our employers, and I know that your agency really worked hard and made that a number-one priority over the last few years. So that's a great performance on your part. And thank you for coming in today. And if you would send a message, pass a message to Steve, I need to get together with Steve sometime and kind of walk through some things before we get too far into the session. So
I would be glad to, Senator.
all right. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
It's good to see you again. We have Jim McClellan and Scott Bess here from the Excel Center program and Goodwill Agency, and they are not a state agency, Senator Italian, so I lied to you about who would be presenting before you. But as you know, we have visited a couple of their facilities and watched their operations, and there's a question as to whether we need to enlarge or expand our commitment to these programs, and I thought that it was worthwhile for us to give them the opportunity to present their vision to us of what they think we need to be thinking about for the next 2 years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jim, and you, Scott, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator. We really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you about this. And what I'd like to do is provide a little bit of background. And yes, most of you, I think, have seen one or more Excel centers now. And
Right.
I don't need to spend a lot of time describing it, but I'd like to give you a little bit of background and perspective. And then Scott's going to go into some more detail about what we're seeing, the results we're getting, and what we'd like to do with your support over the next couple of years. You know, we are, there is a lot of alignment between what we're doing, I think, and what you just heard in the last presentation. And we're focused on that segment of the population, the 500,000 to 700,000 adults in Indiana who lack a high school diploma. Unfortunately, that number's not getting any smaller. There are at least 4,000 students who drop out of Indiana high schools every year. That number really, realistically, could be as high as 10,000, depending on what numbers you use. But it's a lot of young people who are not going to be qualified for any but the lowest paying jobs, and many of them end up on some form of public assistance. The GED has not been a viable option for most. The academic literature really is not very supportive of that type of certificate, and a lot of research, most of it done by James Heckman at the University of Chicago, shows that in terms of economic and social statistics, GED recipients look almost exactly like high school dropouts when you're comparing incomes, unemployment rates, divorce rates, and substance abuse. Now, whatever the reason a person drops out of school, though, the Excel Centers are offering a second chance. Or I got a note earlier this week from one of our students up in Anderson, and she was just thanking so much. She was so grateful for the opportunity in an Excel Center at what she termed as another chance at education and life. And certainly what we're doing is giving a second chance to adults to earn a diploma, move toward a post-secondary credential that enhances their employability and enables them to improve not only their lives, but also the lives of their children. So 4 years ago, we opened the first Excel Center with 300 students. We knew there was a need. We had no idea what the demand would be. And what we found out very quickly was that if we designed a school to really fit the life circumstances of the prospective students, and we provided the kinds of supports that enable them to stay in school, graduate, the demand was just overwhelming. They're really eager to seize the opportunity. And in response to demand, we now operate 9 Excel Centers, 5 in Indianapolis, 1 each in Lafayette, Kokomo, Anderson, and Richmond. Over half of our students are under age 25. Nearly 3/4 are under age 30. After they graduate, most of them are going to be working for another 35 or 40 years with credentials that enable them to earn higher wages, pay more taxes, and consume less public support than would have been likely otherwise. The way we view it, in this state's efforts to raise education attainment levels, our students really represent some low-hanging fruit. We're not a total solution, but we're a relatively low-cost part of a solution to a very big problem. But there's more to consider. 44% of our students have children under age 6. 91% have children under age 18. The younger ones often come to school with their mom or dad, and they receive free child care in our drop-in centers that many of you have seen while their parents are in class. Some of our students who have school-aged children tell us that they and their children do their homework together around the kitchen table. And at every graduation, at least 1/3 of the graduates have some of their own children in the audience watching mom or dad in a cap and gown walk across the stage and get a diploma. And those kids are never going to forget that moment, and their view of school will be different as a result. So will their likely education attainment. One study we've seen shows that the child of a high school graduate is 50% less likely to drop out of school than is the child of a dropout. And if the parents have any college or a vocational certificate, the likelihood of one of their children dropping out of school decreases to 5%. We know our graduates will benefit from having earned their diplomas, but we think the long-term impact on their children is likely to be even greater. Now, the Excel Centers are unique, and they're getting a lot of attention nationally. PBS NewsHour did a 7-minute segment on them that's aired nationally at least 3 times this year. There's a New York-based filmmaker who's now making a documentary that will prominently feature the Excel Centers. Over the last 2 years, we've had visitors from across the country, including representatives of 29 other Goodwill industries from 19 different states, national foundations, one of which is going to have its March board meeting in Indianapolis so all their board members can see what we're doing, the Philanthropy Roundtable, the Aspen Institute, staff from the National Governors Association, and others. We're also working with organizations in several states that want to start Excel Centers, and the first one outside of Indiana opened in August in Austin, Texas, under a licensing arrangement with us. Another will open next year in Memphis, Tennessee. These and any other schools that operate under licensing arrangements with us pay upfront fees, and they receive ongoing services for which we charge an additional fee. These developments are bringing visitors and new money into the state. And with the growth, Goodwill Education Initiatives now employs over 250 people in Indiana, teachers, life coaches, college and career transition staff, data analysts, and child care workers. And our organization's reputation as a good place to work has enabled us to attract top-flight teachers and staff. 2013, we opened 4 new Excel Centers. We had 3,600 applications for 68 positions. We have a very solid base on which to continue building to make these opportunities available to more people in more communities in Indiana, as well as in licensing arrangements in other parts of the country. The Excel Centers are the most exciting development I have been part of in a career that's now spanned more than 4 decades. And if we're able to continue growing, the long-term impact is going to be enormous. Impact in the lives of people and impact in the communities where these schools are located. And we want to grow only as fast as we can maintain very high quality. We know you need to control the rate of growth for fiscal reasons, and my hope is that we'll find your ability to fund growth and our ability to manage it to be very compatible. Scott's going to talk now about more about what we're doing and what we would like to do over the next 2 years with your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you, Scott.
See you all. So again, for those that have been through the center, thanks for coming through. This map you're looking at up on the screens shows dropout density. This uses census data down to a census tract, and it shows where there's density of dropouts. And obviously, the areas in red are the most dense, and you go out from there. It's no surprise. This is most of the larger population centers in our state. I just really wanted to kind of give a sense of perspective there. Current capacity for adult high schools. Again, we're here talking specifically about Excel Centers today, but understand there are other centers that also serve students. So Crystal House Doors has a location with a couple of hundred. There's a center in Gary. Gary Middle College has a couple of hundred students. And there's a program in Porter County which has students as well. So those are all, and I know Senator Talion has
Senator Talion, you had a question?
We do have one, but I want to ask this question as you proceed through this. What do you call an adult?
Yeah. So we in the last session, or in the last session, we had an official definition of an adult high school, and so it's students that serve the majority of their population, 20 or age 20 and over, and so these are the centers that have that. There are actually adults enrolled in high schools all across the state, but obviously those are a very, very small percentage of those students. So it's just, this is areas where you have official programs that have typically been chartered and then are serving primarily adults. Again, we have 9 locations with about 2,800 students today. And again, you see a few students enrolled in tradition. So again, statewide today, we have about 3,500 students enrolled in what would be considered an adult high school. Our current results from an Excel Center perspective, we've graduated 925 students to date. Student number 1,000 will graduate, it looks like sometime in February. So that'll be a milestone for us. We anticipate in this school year about 650 graduates. So as we have come up to speed and gotten traction, we are seeing a number of graduates accelerate. But I'm most proud of the fact that, again, related back to the DWD presentation, 2/3 of our graduates have also received an industry certification in one of those career pathways. And you can see these are the career pathways that we focus on as a state, and that's no accident. Those are the only ones that we provide.
Scott, has your percentage of those who start that make it to the finish line, have you managed to stay close to your original performances there?
Question. So actually, it's increased every year.
It's increased.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we started, we had a lot of churn, right? Students come in, weren't sure, they started, and then
Right.
they left after a while. We have increased that every single year that we've been in operation to keep the retention up.
Is there any percentage that you're willing to disclose of what your completion rate is? For example, do 1 in 3 make it, or 1 in 5, or?
I'll use, we use this metric internally, and I'll share it with you all. We look at, and it just really gets to a return on investment piece, right? So if we have, just to make the math easy, let's say we have a school with 300 seats that are being funded. We look at the percentage of students, percentage of graduates that come out of that. So out of 300 seats, our schools, the top schools that we've got, are around 31, 32% of the student base is graduating.
Each year.
Each year. If you compare that across, traditional high school or others, most of the time that number, if you look at a high school funding, the number of seats they're being funded for, the number of graduates they produce generally is somewhere around, the good ones are 21, 22%. We have a lot of high schools across the state that are in that 16, 17% stage. And so we compare ourselves there. But to answer your question, we are getting up past that 1 in 3, where we're starting to see people
Okay.
who come in are starting to graduate.
Right.
Employment.
Well, I think sometimes people forget that you're still dealing with a crowd of people that not everybody's going to make it. And so that ratio is something that we always need to kind of stay on top of.
What we use a phrase all the time is, you have to remember that the baseline graduation rate for all of our students coming in was 0. Right? Nobody made it through. The reason they're here is because they dropped out for whatever reason. So that's how we look at it. 14% of our students were employed full-time prior to their enrollment. After graduation, we're up to 70% of our students are now employed full-time.
That's pretty good.
And so that's where we're really seeing that. For those of you that look at, are you producing quality graduates? Our waiver rate for the past school year is right around 5%. And so again, these are students, they're passing the end of course assessments. It's a quality diploma. Almost all of them are getting a Core 40 diploma. We don't do much. That last note there, if a student does receive a waiver, our local requirement is that they have to have an industry certification. They cannot graduate with a waiver without that. And so that's just a local requirement we put on. You have a one-page summary as part of your handouts, but about 2 years ago, we had Dr. Michael Hicks of Ball State do an economic impact study for us. Now, he looked at graduates from the first 2 years of the Excel Center. So this is early in the program. And this was also prior to where we really started ramping up our emphasis on industry certifications. But what he found was that there was a significant increase in employability and wage earnings versus kind of the control group of dropouts. And in fact, that annual wage increase of $9,330 for the grads, in the control group over that same time, again, because of the downstream impact of the Great Recession, actually showed a $2,330 decrease in their annual wage earnings. So we look at that and say, this is making an impact. And as Jim mentioned, because the average age of our graduates is somewhere around 23 or 24 years old, those people are going to make that additional money for another 40 years as they go through the system, which generates additional tax revenue, takes them off of public assistance, and all kinds of downstream revenue impacts. So our short-term expansion plans, with, again, the most important bullet being the top one, which says anything we talk about is contingent upon funding. So that's the big caveat. Our plan is to, in the next school year, in the 15-16 school year, is to add 3 schools. There would be 2 additional schools here in central Indiana, operated by us, and 1 school in South Bend, which would be operated by the South Bend Goodwill under license from us. I also know that Crystal House Doors is planning to open a new location next year as well on the west side of Indianapolis. In 2016-17, we would do another school in the northern northwest Indiana, again operated by the South Bend Goodwill, which would be targeting more the Gary, Hammond, East Chicago area.
And this is still working off of your high dropout demographic analysis.
Place we're talking about going is focused on those high density areas.
Okay.
One in southern Indiana and in 2 additional here in central Indiana. We would look at an Excel Center capacity increase from about 2,800 students to around 5,000. Now that would take the total state capacity, which again includes the Porter County program, Gary Middle College, Doors, which together with some expansion would enroll about 1,000 students.
Okay.
For them, we'd have 5,000. In addition, one of the things that we have started to look at, and in fact, one of our central Indiana locations will be a co-location with Ivy Tech. And so we'll actually be located inside their building, working together, sharing the daycare facility with them. And as we have leases expire on our existing schools, we're going to continue to look at ways that we can co-locate. Ivy Tech has been very receptive to that.
I appreciate you pursuing that.
That's been great. Yeah. I mean, Ivy Tech has been extraordinarily receptive. They jumped right on it and said, that
Good.
sounds great. Funding needs. The current funding level, as you all know, is about $6,600 per student. Now, that does not allow for any other state funding. So there's no special education funding or vocational funding that students in the traditional K through 12 stream get. Now, we are also, but because of federal special education law, we are mandated to provide special education services to all students who are under the age of 22. All right, and so we continue to do that. The bill that passed in the last session, there are some additional requirements there. One is that we offer industry certifications or dual credit, which we do. And the other one is that we continue to follow up services with students after graduation, which again, we have done from the beginning. And as we have found that, if you look down at the issues, number of graduates last year, we doubled last year, and we may almost double that again this year. Following them gets harder and harder every year. The good news is we're being successful. The tough news, you have to follow them. The number of students receiving vocational training has gone from 40% in about the second year of our operation. We were over 70% last year of students getting vocational certification. And a fourth of our students who are age 21 or younger are also special education students needing services.
That's a surprising percentage.
It's interesting, as we talk with them, they receive services through school, and that population, if you look at our graduation rates across the state, you'll see the graduation rates for special education services is much lower than the graduation rates for general ed. They are then coming to us, and we're working with them. And remember, all the funds that we use to support all of these activities come from that $6,600. So request.
Yeah, Senator Talion.
I'm not sure who I'm asking this of. The money that you currently get, what line item of the budget does that come from? Where does that come out of?
Well, this morning I asked a separate line item under the Department of Education, Adult Ed. Adult learners.
Oh, okay, so all.
This morning when I
yes,
asked that question.
All right. So all of this money, the $6,600, and does that include everything?
Yes, that's all, and that's all we get.
Is there some complexity index, or it's just a standard amount?
Just
All
straight.
right.
It's a standalone appropriation, a separate line item in the budget,
Okay, thank you.
not part of the formula.
The request then is for the 15-16 school year is to increase from the current appropriation up to $33 million. That would take us from the locations we have today up to 16 locations, and again, this sounds probably way more, it looks way more precise than it probably is, but 4,845 students. That's using the estimates that we had from all the schools. Again, that's 12 Excel centers, 2 Crystal House Doors locations, Gary Middle College continuing to operate, and the Porter County program also continuing to operate. And then we've also asked for the per pupil funding to increase from $6,600 to $6,800 to allow for that postgraduate tracking and follow-up. In 16-17, again, bumping from 16 locations up to 20 locations and going up to around 6,000 students, which would get us up to about $41 million. And again, the $33 million and the $41 million accounts for the growth and also for the slight increase in the per pupil For those students aged 21 or younger, and this is where we are wide open on this, and we're also open to other suggestions, and that is because those students who are 21 or younger, if they walked into any high school in the state, they would receive vocational funding, they would receive special education funding. We're asking that we would be able to do that with those students, to be able to receive that, or, and this is a huge or, and again, we're wide open to lots of other ors, for those students 21 or younger, instead of coming out of the $6,600 or $6,800 separate line item appropriation, that they come out of the K through 12 funding stream just as any other 18, 19, or 20-year-old enrolled in high school would do. This would allow us to fully fund, in the way that we need to, the special education services that we're providing, and then also to get the reimbursement for the vocational funding that we do. So those are requests. Be happy to entertain any questions from
Yes,
from the
Senator
panel.
Talley.
Sorry, one more. It used to be that there was this $14 million a year that came for adult ed from the feds, or, well, we had some and the feds had matched it. That money, it's my understanding, was transferred to DWD a couple of years ago.
That's right.
So none of that money goes into this. Is that?
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Chairman Brown.
Thank you. Are most of your dropouts higher than that 21 age, or how many years of high school have they finished?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of our students come in, and again, it ranges from 0 high school to just a couple of credits left, so understand there's a big range. The average person is just under halfway through. Most of them dropped out somewhere in their sophomore, junior year. Most of those that were older were undercredited, they were behind. Age-wise, our median age is right around 22 or 23, so most are a little bit older. But again, we still have a lot of 19 and 20-year-olds in there as well.
Okay, because, part of thinking about this and looking how you can educate high school or get a high school diploma, in less than 4 years, 3 years,
Yes.
and on an accelerated schedule, just intrigues the heck out of me. But I think it's for that older student as opposed to the 17-year-old going through and doesn't want to go too fast.
Yeah.
So that being said, the second thing is back to your co-locating with Ivy Tech. When we were in Richmond and the wonderful Excel Center in Richmond, I mean, every time I go to these, I'm so enthused with your staff, and everybody is so engaged and so energized by the job they do. It is very uplifting. But they talked about welding courses and welding certificate. And then we went over to Ivy Tech and went through a big, nice new welding building that had bunches of hoods and machines there. And we thought, geez, can't Excel Centers do welding here or that sort of thing? So are you exploring more co-location? In centers where you've already established, can you reach out for some of those especially high
Yeah, absolutely.
cost areas?
Matter of fact, Ivy Tech today provides most of our certification work that we do. So the welding certification, we just had a group get done here in central Indiana. Ivy Tech did all the instruction for that. Vincennes also provides some certification work, particularly in some of the logistics areas. They do that. So we don't actually invest in any equipment or anything ourselves. We outsource all of that. And the reason we do that is in order to be completely responsive to employers, we want to be able to ramp up and ramp down the certifications that we offer. And if we have this big investment in equipment and everything else, you're almost stuck. And so what we do is we outsource all of that to, again, the Ivy Techs and Vincennes for the most part. We do some work with IUPUI here in the city. So our philosophy has always been to allow others to do that as much as we can.
I think I was so, I'm like Chairman Brown, I was so impressed with that young lady over at Richmond that had that math background. And I heard her talk about how we're going to emphasize math. And I'm sitting there thinking, I bet. And so we go down the hallway there, and she's got that young man teaching algebra. and not just baby algebra, but it was real algebra. And I actually looked at the students to see if I thought that they were tracking on what he was saying, and they were. And I thought that was a pretty impressive achievement.
Just an example, we just got the first batch of end-of-course assessments back from our fall testing, and we actually exceeded the state average on that. Again, we're teaching a full course of algebra in 16 weeks to people who had all dropped out of high school. And so, again, the teaching is phenomenal. It takes, as Jim said, we're able to be pretty picky on our staff. But this is, the main point there, and I'm glad you all picked up on that, is this is full-out high school. This isn't, let's try and get them up to take a test or something like that. We focus hard on the skills that they need to be successful in the next thing, and that makes all the difference.
We'll do the best we can to work with you. We've got a few challenges ahead of us this next 5 months.
We understand, we appreciate it. And again, anytime you need anything or more information, we'd be happy to.
Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Klinker.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say thank you for all your work in Lafayette. You wouldn't think that would be an area, maybe with the university and great schools, but you have really accomplished a real mission there and have great facilities, let me say that, and the people are excited. Do you keep track now of your graduates and where they go?
Yes, ma'am. It's interesting. We also just did, so we followed them after they graduate and get into their first job placement. And the thing that was fascinating to me, we were doing an update a few weeks ago on our graduates who had been out, what we call term 2, so they basically graduated about a year ago. And we knew their placement numbers and their job and their wage rates. What we're seeing now is those students are now entering into their second job or the job promotion. So we're seeing their wage rates go up after that first year, which means that it's sticking. And that was very gratifying to us.
I know Michael Hicks has done a study for you, but I wondered how you felt
That's right.
Personally, because in our particular area, they also get free transportation, free textbooks, but there's also a Food Finders food bank there.
Yep.
And many of your participants
They use-
also get the
right.
food
That's
at
right.
that location. So you have combined efforts
we
to
do.
help them in many ways, and we
Right, that
appreciate
full
it.
wraparound, because again, if you can remove as many barriers as possible, they'll stick with it, and then they'll graduate, and then they're good to go.
And we're
Thank
going
you
to
very
track their
much.
progress as long as we possibly can.
Thank you.
We really
Appreciate
want
that.
to know long-term what the impact is.
Well, I know the young lady came when the Budget Committee went to the Metropolitan in Indianapolis, and the young lady had to get quickly to work, even though she spoke about being a CNA.
That's right.
And I think she had been in prison prior to that circumstance. So it really has made a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Happy holidays. Okay, folks, we're coming down the home stretch, so just a couple more days, and be here next Wednesday at 9 o'clock in the morning, and bring your appetites.